Good morning. Welcome to First Universalist Unitarian Church. My name is Karen Minarski, and I'm a member of this congregation and also serve on the Board of Trustees. I want to extend a special welcome to everyone joining us here and online this morning. Since 1870, UUWASA has served as a vital voice for liberal religion in central Wisconsin. We are an intentionally free society that welcomes people of all ages just as you are, regardless of age, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or economic situation. Wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We are currently worshiping both in-line and in person, so be sure to subscribe to the church's newsletter and follow us on Facebook or Instagram for updates. So I have some announcements this morning, and there are quite a few of them. And you can refer to the yellow pages in the order of worship. Today is our first Sunday's potluck for November. Please join us upstairs in the dining hall directly following the service for food and fellowship. There is a sign-up sheet in the atrium for people willing to help with a pre-Thanksgiving dinner for the refugees. Please check out the sheet and sign up to bring a dish. We're having our annual UU Thanksgiving dinner on November 19th. Read more about it in the yellow pages and sign up at the table in the atrium. I guess there's one more than I realized. The Environmental Action Group is compiling its annual list of books for holiday gift giving on the themes of climate, ecology, natural history, and the environment. We are looking for titles suitable for children, young adults, and mature readers. Everyone in the congregation is invited to participate. The deadline is Tuesday, November 15th. Then I have an official notice from the Board of Trustees of the First Universalist Unitarian Church of Wausau. As required by the bylaws, an annual meeting of the congregation will be held Sunday, December 11th at 11:45 a.m. after the service. The meeting will be held in the sanctuary. You will receive the annual report to the congregation. This will be emailed to you. You could also make arrangements to pick up a hard copy at church. Please contact our congregational administrator, Donica Gibson, at donica@uuwasa.org or 715-842-3697 if you want an arrangement other than email. Included in the annual report will be at least the following: reports of officers and staff, the election of members to the Board of Trustees, the Endowment Committee, and the Nominating Committee, an annual budget, minutes from the last annual meeting. We will vote on necessary business items during the course of the meeting, including the following bylaw changes. Bylaw 4, Section 1, change number of board members from 9 to 6 to 9, and changing from 3 of whom shall be chosen annually to 2 to 3 of whom. Under number 4, change nominating committee to board development and nominating committee. Bylaw 7, Section 1, change name of nominating committee to board development committee and nominating committee. Rewrite number 1 to reflect updated number of board members and name of committee. Number 3, update name of committee. If you are unable to attend the meeting, you can also request an absentee ballot ahead of time. This would then need to be returned to the church by the day of the annual meeting in order to be included in the vote total. Again, please contact Donica if you want an absentee ballot. All church members are allowed to vote. And finally, it's time. It's time to renew. It's time to renew your financial commitment to our church. Without you, we are weaker. With you, we are stronger. And we ask you to be generous. As you increase your generosity, we become stronger. Our voice in the community becomes louder. we help you become stronger too. So when your new pledge form comes in the mail, complete it with generosity in your hearts. Thank you. And with that, let us gather our hearts and minds for worship. Please join me in reciting the church's chalice lighting. You will find the words printed in the order of service. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. We light this symbol of our faith as we gather together. Then please stand as you're able and join us in singing the hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit.
Please remain standing and join me in the church's affirmation. The words are printed in your order of worship. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other. In our doxology.
So for this morning's wandering wonder box, I have paper plates. I have squigs. Has anyone ever seen these before? I saw a hand, awesome. They're little suction cup toys. We have our squishy squish stress balls from downstairs. And I have eyeballs. Anyone have a guess as to what these things all might have in common? Tessa. Can you yell? They're all around? That's a really good guess. So I'm not going to keep you in suspense. These are all toys from RE, and more specifically, these are all toys the kids have been bored with. And even more specifically than that, these are all toys the kids were bored with that they made new games with. So squigs are a suction cup building toy, like I said, and you can play a game like bocce with them where you have like a centerpiece and you chuck another toy at it. What the kids did is they took all these and they marked a distance and they threw them out of the wall and they made a cooperative game to figure out if they could get them all to stick to the wall, which is a lot harder than it sounds. The eyeballs and paper plates were part of a Halloween event, and they were like a sensory activity, and they took and they made ping pong with the eyeballs, and these squish balls had become multiple games down in RE before. So I think kids saying they're bored. How many of you ever heard, "Oh, I'm so bored"? Maybe not in that tone. How many of you ever said it? I know I have. Just like that too. Garrett, I'm so bored. But I think it gets a really bad rap because as we can see here, from boredom came great creativity and teamwork and building. But being bored is boring, and it can be really uncomfortable. So really, the joy of boredom with kids is what they're able to do with it. And I want to share with you a story this morning, not just me, with some volunteers, that we like to use at the end of RE. It's an activity when maybe the fun's starting to kind of peter out of the games they've been playing. It's called a one-word story. And I've got a couple volunteers who are going to help me this morning. I saw a head nod. Awesome. So we are going to tell a story this morning about a frog who was bored. And what's going to happen is I'm going to start us off with, you guys are going to have to gather around the mic so everyone can hear you. Thank you. Start us off with Once Upon a Time, and I will end the story with, and that was our story for today. Y'all ready to go? Awesome. Once upon a time, there was a frog who was very bored.
So he wanted to think of a game.
One word.
Oh, sorry.
Well, so he wanted to think of a game.
So he found
A
peanut in
a
couch cushion. He
was
very
happy to
show
the peanut
to
his grandpa
who was
very
intrigued
by this
Hey, we deal with the hard words, Sally.
development. So
he
decided to
play
a
game with
squinks
with his
grandson.
he was
Excited
to play
a
game.
And that was our story for today. Thank you all. Big hand for our volunteers. So I'm going to invite you to join me in blessing our children down to our not boring RE groups with "May peace surround you." The words are printed in your order of worship.
May peace surround you, may love surround you as you go on your way. May peace surround you, may love surround you as you go
The mission and ministry of UUWASA is made possible by the generous support of its friends and members. Rather than pass a plate at this time, we've placed an offering basket in the back of the sanctuary for you to drop a gift in. You can also stop by our website, uuwasa.org, to make a one-time or recurring gift with your credit or debit card. Thank you for your support.
I'd like to invite everyone into a spirit of meditation and prayer. Start by putting your feet flat and firm on the ground. If you prefer to pray or meditate with your eyes closed, now's a good time to close them. And we'll start with an awareness on the top of our head. Move down into your jaw and let the tension out. Take a breath up into your shoulders and slowly press them down. Take another breath deep into your belly and slowly out. Let us pray. Spirit of every moment, of all history, we celebrate your call to us to serve, to love and care for all the world around us, to find food for the hungry, warm garments for the naked, a place of safety for all who are threatened, and justice for those who are ill-treated. We know that we are small and our horizons are limited. Most of the time, we cannot see the destination for every journey. Most of the time, we see the stones and potholes in the road and lose sight of where the road is heading. O gentle Spirit of life, help us to remember how closely we are connected to each other. Help us see past those differences that we think divide us. Help us reach out and love to those who seem so different. Help us to be your hands and feet, your heart and soul, in every place where we are called to serve. And help us lift the burdens of pain we know. Hear now our prayers for those in need, for those in pain, for those who grieve, for those who think that they have been forgotten. And now let us call to mind all the joys and sorrows in our lives, and let us meditate on them in silence together now. Amen. Please remain seated for prayer hymn number 159. This is my song.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
This morning's reading is a poem entitled Sitting Down to Breakfast Alone by the poet Christian Wyman. Christian is a native of Texas, and it starts with the Texas word, the Texas slang word for breakfast. Anybody know what it is? Breakfast. That's how you say breakfast in Texas. So, the poet writes, breakfast, she called it, gently greasing over blanching yolks with an expertise honed from 3 decades of dawns at the Longhorn Diner in Lorraine, where even the oldest in the old men's booth swore as if it were scripture truth that they had never had a breakfast better, rapping a glass sharply to get her attention when it went sorrowing so far into some simple thing. The jangly door on a crusted pan, the wall clock's black, hitchy hands that she would startle, blink, then grin, as if discovering them all over again. Who remembers now when one died, the space that he had occupied went unfilled for a day, then 2, 3, until she unceremoniously plunked plates down in the wrong places and stared their wronged faces back to banter she could hardly follow. Unmarried, childless, homely, slow, she knew coffee cut with chamomile kept the grocer Paul's ulcer cool. Yarrow and gravy eased the islands of lesions in Larry Browrick's hands. And when some night-long nameless urgency sent him seeking human company, Brother Tom needed hash browns with cheese. She knew to nod at the litany of cities the big-rig long haulers bragged her past, to laugh when the hunters asked if she'd pray for them or the quail they went laughing off to kill. And then, envisioning one rising so fast, it seemed the sun tugged at it to do exactly that. Who remembers where they all sat? Crook-backed builders, drought-faced farmers, VFers, muttering through their wars. Night shift roughnecks so caked and black it seemed that they had made their way back every morning from the dead. And who remembers one word they said? The Longhorn Diners long torn down, the gin and feedlots gone, the town itself now nothing but a name at which some bored boy has taken aim, every letter lightly pierced and partial. Sister, Aunt Sissy, bear a thrailkill. I picture you one dime-bright dawn grown ever brighter now for being gone, bustling amid the formica and chrome of that small house we both called home during the spring that was your last. All stories stop. Once more you're lost in something I can merely see. Steam spitting out for black coffee, the scorched pores of toast, a bowl of apple butter like edible soil, bald cloth, knife light, the lip of a glass, my plates gleaming, teeming emptiness. Therein ends our reading. So years ago, I was sitting with my daughter in a pediatrician's office waiting room, hating every minute, thinking of the 25 things I could do if I wasn't wasting time waiting on a doctor. Is anybody a doctor here? I'm going to insult doctors briefly. Is that okay? Anyways, doctors, which seem to me like a class of professionals that seem to struggle to know how to tell time. So with us in this waiting room was a little girl and her mother. This girl would crawl from one end of the room to the other, and she had a little penny in her hand, and she would put the penny on her ground, and she would wait a moment, and then she would excitedly pick this penny up and yell, "Mommy, look, I found a penny!" The mother, looking at her cell phone, she wouldn't even look up, and she would say something like, "Oh, that's wonderful, honey." And then the little girl with the penny would crawl somewhere else in the waiting room. She would put the exact same penny on the ground. She would wait another moment, and then she would grab it and say, "Look, Mommy, I found a penny." Every single time she would do this as if it was something to behold for the first time. And then she would scan the entire waiting room, looking to see the amazement on all of your faces. This routine went on for at least 15 minutes, with each discovery as wonderful as the last. And children are wonderful like this. You can play the same thing with children, a game like peekaboo, for huge chunks of time. All you have to do to play peekaboo is you just put your hands in front of your face, you pull them down, and you shout boo. And what happens? The child jumps and laughs and welcomes the exchange all over again. And even as children grow, they maintain an amazing degree of pleasure in monotony. As I've said from this pulpit before, my daughter loves Alicia Keys. I am never not hearing Alicia Keys' songs blaring from behind her bedroom door. And every morning before school, we put on the exact same Alicia Keys playlist, starting with Girl on Fire, moving to 3 Hour Drive, maybe then an Empire State of Mind, but in any case, I start every day with Alicia Keys. Now, I would like to say that adults grow out of this tendency for monotony, but we don't, at least not fully. Most of the adults I know are creatures of habit, even though we like to pretend we are endlessly original. Truth is, most of us follow along with whatever pop culture tells us, which is to praise newness, an impulse like we're cult members praising our leader. But since we're in church, let's be honest, admit that we are pretty set in our ways. Maybe you've eaten the same breakfast for years, or you like a certain set of lights on around the house at a certain time of day, or that the very first thing you reach for in the morning is your phone as you wander on down the hallway to sit atop your porcelain throne. Personally, I've listened to the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds and Miles Davis' Kind of Blue at least 42,000 times, and I never tire of hearing them. And every time I brush my teeth, I start on the bottom right, and I move clockwise every 30 seconds until I achieve the 2 minutes that the American Dental Association tells me I should do when I brush my teeth. But we watch commercials that tell us that my life awaits real discovery on the island of Fiji or on a Carnival cruise. But you see, I tend to think that the daily boring aspects of life are actually the most important. So the late British philosopher Bertrand Russell, he called stuff like this, quote, fruitful monotony. Isn't that a lovely phrase? Monotony is really just another word for boredom or dullness. And boredom and dullness are some of life's many ingredients. Of course, discovery and seduction and adventure and daring are certainly parts of life, but most of life, let's admit it, is dailiness. It's sleeping, it's going to the bathroom, it's tidying up after dinner, tucking the kids in at night, stubbing your toe, answering questions. I recently watched 2 documentaries, one on Lady Gaga and the other one on Selena Gomez, 2 marvelous artists. Now, bear in mind that these 2 women have more money than we would ever know what to do with. They have legions of fans, and they have huge platforms upon which to influence millions of people. But you can spend 90 minutes with both of those ladies behind the scenes in this documentary, and guess what you discover? That they're just as boring and vain and insecure as you are. The real meaning of life isn't made on stage or in Hollywood. For both of these ladies, the meaning of their life really happens around the dinner table, at the doctor's office. It's gossiping on road trips with old friends who they split a large order of McDonald's French fries and a Diet Coke with. In their own ways, they struggle to balance presence to life's dailiness, just like the rest of us. Now, Bertrand Russell didn't live in the smartphone era, so he never saw anyone walking down the street on a perfect fall afternoon in Wausau with their face buried in a tiny glowing rectangle. But he wouldn't be surprised by the sight either. He wouldn't be surprised because he saw in his time how much we struggle with boredom. He saw then that our aversion to unhappiness and boredom robs us of those two key ingredients to living a full life. You see, what Russell believed is that the modern person's greatest fear is boredom. I'm going to quote Russell, and then I'm going to explain what he means. Here's Bertrand. Quote, "I do not mean that monotony has any merits of its own. I mean only that certain good things are not possible except where there is a certain degree of monotony. A generation that cannot endure boredom will be a generation of little people, of people unduly divorced from the slow processes of nature, of little people in whom every vital impulse slowly withers, as though they were cut flowers in a vase." End quote. Russell goes on to say this: "A happy life must be, to a great extent, a quiet life, for it is only in an atmosphere of quiet that true joy can live." Only in an atmosphere of quiet that true joy can live. I think what Russell's getting at is that our modern quest for constant happiness ends up becoming a self-inflicted wound in the sense that we end up hungering for mere sex over love, entertainment over edification, convenience over culture, and in so doing, we miss out on life's simple pleasures. On this very same topic, about 100 years before, the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard said pretty much the exact same thing. He said that humankind's greatest source of unhappiness is our impulse to escape the present by keeping busy. In other words, we don't want to be alone with our thoughts, probably because the narrative in our minds would fillet us, and for good reason. Now, bear in mind that Kierkegaard lived 170 years ago and Russell died in 1970, and yet their thinking predicted a recent study that shows that human beings would rather suffer pain than be alone with our thoughts. So let me start by asking you a question. I'm going to turn you all into test subjects for a moment. Here's your question. Would you rather feel pain or pay a couple of bucks to avoid it? How many of you would pay a couple of bucks to avoid pain? None of you. Oh, masochist or whatever that's called. Okay. In any case, if you answered avoid pain, and most of you did, let's say that, then you're in line with every single person in this scientific study I'm about to tell you about. So here's the background. Psychologists from Virginia and Harvard universities, they collaborated, and what they told test subjects was that you will be put alone in a room with a switch that only you can control that would give you a non-lethal but very noticeable electric shock. You got it? You're in a room alone, you've got a switch, you can shock yourself. That's it. Sit alone in a room with your thoughts for 6 to 15 minutes. Do not distract yourself and shock yourself if you want. You got it? I'm sure most of you are asking, why would anyone shock themselves? It seems so silly and so easy. Sit alone, do nothing, and think for 6 to 15 minutes. Does this sound hard to any of you? It's about to get interesting. Here's what happened. More than 58% of people, that's 6 in 10 people, found it so unbearable to be alone with nothing to do aside from think that they shocked themselves on average of 1.47 times. They decided to shock themselves, suffering the very same pain they said that they would pay in order to avoid. One gentleman in the study shocked himself 190 times in 15 minutes. That's like 13 times a minute, just shocking yourself. Now, if you're wondering whether this behavior changed on the person's age, it didn't. People ranging in age from 18 to 77 shocked themselves at the exact same rate, which proves once and for all that being old does not guarantee wisdom. But boredom, which is what this test was about, boredom is a hot topic in the field of modern psychoanalysis. Adam Phillips, which is a name you all should know, he's widely regarded as the Carl Jung of our day. He wrote a delightfully titled book in about 1994 called On Kissing, Tickling, and Being Bored. Best book title ever. So in it, what he does is he argues that being something we should try and avoid, boredom actually protects the individual and makes tolerable for us the impossible experience of waiting for something without knowing what it could be. I'm going to summarize that. Boredom is a key ingredient to life that allows us to endure life's unknowns. The space between what was and what will be. That silent space between, those moments of unknowing. It's those moments of boredom that strengthen us to keep going regardless of what comes, but only if you pay attention. I think this message in favor of mindful boredom is especially important to us here in the 21st century. After all, distractions are everywhere, and a message that is hammered into us whenever we start school is that being good means being productive. I have a task for you. Call someone you know on the phone tomorrow and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'll bet you $5 that they'll tell you, "I'm really busy." I bet they'll tell you that because feeling busy and being busy isn't bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. But when most of life's meaning comes from an impulse to feel and look busy always, then I think it's wise to ask, is there a cost to living like this? The wonderful essayist Maria Popova, she says that choosing distraction and busyness to avoid boredom ends up robbing us of presence. And when this happens, it severs us from living life as it is. When we seek to fill every moment with busyness and distraction, we stop thinking about what we're looking forward to. We stop thinking about what might come and the bad habits we might need to deal with. In other words, whenever we're constantly distracted, we lose groundedness to what is. On some level, we all know this. But the cultural pathology of our time is this. If we stopped doing what we do, we might not know who we are. As experts on the human condition going back to Buddha and St. Paul have warned, being present to life is hard, especially with today's gadgets. And in addition to modern life being a distracted one, modern life is also a sad one. Last Thursday in the New York Times, I read with interest David Brooks' piece called "The Rising Tide of Global Sadness." In it, he talks about how as a culture, we're not only sadder than ever, we don't even talk about happiness and love like we used to. He cites Taylor Swift's new album, Midnights, which everyone should go out and buy and listen to. It's wonderful. Taylor Swift's new album, Midnights, is essentially Swift's coming-of-age saga, and in it she talks about the growing presence of anxiety, exhaustion, and anger in her life. In my favorite song on the album, entitled Antihero, Swift sings these words, "I have this thing where I get older, but never wiser. I should not be left to my own devices," end quote. Here's a bit of history about pop music. Since 1965, pop songs about topics like love have actually dropped 50%. And what do you think has arisen where we used to sing about love? I'll tell you. We now sing about topics like hate. And the news headlines since 2000 aren't any better. Modern headlines on the right and the left have grown more negative in recent years, frequently highlighting words like anger, fear, disgust, and sadness. And what's worse is that throughout the world, unhappiness as we measure it has actually grown immensely. Brooks ends the article with this sentence, quote, "The emotional health of the world is shattering," end quote. The New York Times editors decided to turn off the comments on this particular article at 1,600 unique comments, most of them fully agreeing with everything Brooks said. And if Russell and Kierkegaard were alive today, I expect what they'd say about our modern predicament is that one of life's mysteries is that while our dailiness can lead to despair, that very same dailiness can lead to salvation. I think this is why in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "Give us our day, our daily bread." You see, in this tiny phrase, it understands that we can't store tomorrow's bread for today. We can't hoard life's surpluses for a rainy day. We cannot bind our will today for tomorrow. Human pride's obsession with productivity, with bootstrap mentality, with nostalgia, with tech distractions, with spiritual junk food. None of these things will ever satisfy our innate hunger for ordinary, daily, bodily needs. And it's this lesson that is as old as time. Elsewhere in that doctor's waiting room with the girl and her penny, there were other kids in the toy section playing with toy kitchens and dinner plates, with toy hammers and clipboards and pencils. If you think about it, many of the toys we first give our children are toys that will one day become tools that occupy the dailiness of their lives. They'll learn how to play in a kitchen where one day food will be made. They'll play with plates and learn where food will one day be served. A cash register where you buy what you need, the tools that build and repair a home, utensils we use to eat, objects we need to jot down ordinary moments of life, like writing checks for the doctor's office, for sending birthday cards, for writing thank you notes and love letters. The dailiness of adult life isn't really any different than that little girl and her endless discovery of a penny. What's different about it is our amazement to the fact that we exist at all. The sun rises, the sun sets. You rise, you drink a coffee, you tend to your job, your children, your spouse, and you make a life. The problem is that we take this for granted. An awareness of this might be what's meant in Zen Buddhism by the idea of beginner's mind, a state of mind that doesn't pretend life can be stuffed into boxes, because no level of training can protect us from what's coming. The point of beginner's mind is to help us stop fearing what's happened and what's coming so that we can show up fully now. I recognize that in one sense, doing this demands that we accept that at some point the ground is never fully solid. Even the experts can't figure out how to fix all that's wrong. But accepting this isn't just scary, because when we accept it, it frees us to see that there's no reason to wait until we have all the answers, to turn to the things that matter. Amen. I invite you to rise now as you're willing for our closing hymn, number 19, "The Sun That Shines." If you came here with someone this morning, I invite you to reach out and take their hand. If you're here alone, reach out with your heart. May the truth that sets us free and the hope that never dies and the love that casts out fear lead us forward together until the day spring breaks and all shadows flee away. I invite you to relax, sit down, enjoy the postlude, and don't forget about the fellowship upstairs.